Alright, I'm going to do something just a little bit different for this stream. So usually I know I'm talking about War Machine and I'm talking about Circle Orboros, but today, and this is actually live, so because I wanted to get it posted right away. Today I'm actually talking about the game Judgment. And you may recall about a year ago at this point, actually, I did a video on it. I called it Summary and Judgment then. I'm just going to stick with that name. I like it. And I want to talk about the game Judgment. So if you didn't watch that video way back when, you feel free to do that. However, the folks, Gunmeister Games is the name of the company. It's actually a couple fellows from Australia, Andrew and Jeff Galea, I think I said that right, who've developed a game called Judgment, and it's based on the concept of a MOBA, so League of Legends, Dota 2, Heroes of the Storm, what's the one Smite. There's a few others. It's based on that concept, and the awesome thing about it is this game is played. It's played on either a 2-foot or 3-foot circle, so functionally a 2x2 or 3x3 with just some areas darkened out. And the maps are predefined. It encapsulates the MOBA concept extremely well, which is something that I really like. And one of the most awesome things about this game is that the models are 54mm scale. So for those of you joining me from a War Machine background, that means that you're talking about humanoids that are basically on scale with heavy warjacks and war beasts, or sometimes give or take, but that's the scale you're talking about. So they have, a human is going to be honestly about the size of like an ironclad, probably a little bigger actually, with some of their bigger ones being as big as some of the character jacks that you see in like War Machine. If you play other game systems, I'm sorry I don't have a great reference for you, but 54mm models are amazing. And the models, it's not just that the size of the models, but the sculpting of the models are so thematic and so amazing. And that's what drew me to this game. So just to throw this out there, this is an unofficial podcast. I'm not directly affiliated with them at all. I do like them, and I like the game, and I want to talk about it because I want more people to get involved with it. I have not gotten a chance to play nearly as many games of this as I would like, but when I've done so, it's been a lot of fun. It's very unique. It's very different. It's very balanced. I think it's a very deep game. If you're familiar with MOBAs, there's picking and banning. There's different comps. Another great thing about the game is that there's no factions in this game, right? There are races and there's classes, but there's, if you like this elf model and this other minotaur model, then great, buy them both. Assuming you can build out a way to, that you think you can play. And honestly, like there's no set way to build. So if you like two models, buy the two models and play them. It's great. Or buy them to paint, frankly. They're that amazing. So now they're back, and this is their second Kickstarter, and their first one was a great success. I got the entire line. The models are gorgeous. Griffin's Roost Painting is just starting to get her hands on painting a few more of them, now that some delays in being able to do that have sort of lifted a little bit. And they still look amazing. And starting to try to get to play it. I was able to pick up some foam so I can actually travel with them a little bit. Super excited there. They were able to get the line out in like 6 months, and we're talking. Keep in mind, this is a very small company that's just starting out. They were able to get 14 models out in 6 months from the first Kickstarter, and that's roughly the schedule that they have for this one. So I have complete faith in their ability. Anyways, in the show notes, you'll see a link to the Kickstarter that is going on now. So they have a video series, so feel free to pop over. It's like Play Judgment, I think, on YouTube. Feel free to jump over there and get more details as well. But they have a Kickstarter. They wanted to do a Wave 2 because for this MOBA concept to work, you really need just a certain threshold of characters that have enough thresholds of unique abilities and ways to approach the game for it to continue to be kind of dynamic and develop on its own and sort of have the correct amount of counterplay, right? So some of their early run, for example, didn't have a ton of ranged attacks, and they also wanted to make sure that there was available one of each class and enough that you could play each race as a 5. The game plays, the smaller game is 3 models versus 3 models, and the larger is 5 versus 5, just for some reference. So they put out another Kickstarter, and I have to tell you, I am amazingly excited. The models that they have showed us so far. So if you go in there, I don't have the link running right now on my browser to scroll through, but you can go take a look and scroll through there, and you're gonna see a ton of good stuff. I recommend getting in. Your best deal is going to be to get the early bird all 12. There's still almost 70 of those left. That will give you every model, and you'll get 3 free neutral monsters. So if you've played a MOBA, another aspect of this is there are monsters that basically just will attack if you're near. Basically, that's the short version without getting too deep into the rules in this particular episode. Those models are gorgeous as well, and they're a facet of the game. And if you back to 12 and the Kickstarter funds, of course, you're going to get 3 models for free. So I recommend taking a look at that benefit. There's also one where you get 6 and you get 1 free neutral monster. So that's kind of consider that. And of course, the other prices are good for the Warband or single. If you're joining me from North America, or specifically the US, just keep in mind the exchange rate here is working in your favor. If you're from Canada, I don't know if it is. It's probably about even for you. If you're in Europe, I have no idea. You'll have to look. But I'm guessing the euro is slightly favorable to the dollar right now, so it should still be to your advantage. As of this recording, they are at almost, they're just shy of $50,000 Australian of their $75,000 goal, and it's been 5 days. So I'm very confident in this funding, at least at this time. And I'm very excited. So I just want to kind of roll through here. So this does not include any of the existing heroes, with the exception of they did include the the starter set, which includes map, cardboard tokens, two heroes and a monster, as well as cardboard cutouts and cards for everything, so that you can actually just get up and start playing. And that's listed as an add-on here. I think it's 110 Australian, which is about $86 in US, and 70 in euros. So yeah, that answers that. If you're from Britain, the exchange rate is even more favorable. Of course, all the fine details are on the page, but I'm just going to kind of scroll through here and talk through what I see. They have 12 heroes this time around, and one of the other things that they opted to do was to branch out in their time eras a little bit. So while the fantasy time era is still their kind of primary time period that they are going to have, they also wanted to add in some sci-fi and some like World War I, World War II era. They have a little bit of a steampunk aesthetic, I would say, but they're kind of that a little bit more historical era that you would think of. And I'm gonna move this up here. Sure. So, and that just gives, I know there's some people who are kind of fantasy purists, and I tend to like fantasy more myself as well, but I think it sticks very closely to sort of the MOBA concepts, where heroes can come from kind of wherever, and there's some fluff that explains how this plane exists and people get drawn to it, and so drawing from different places and how different things work is kind of cool, really. And I really like that it kind of starts to add in the more of a little bit of everything, you know, or a little bit something for everybody type feel for the game. So they released one in between the Kickstarter that was not released as part of either Kickstarter. Lori Bella, who's a dwarf supporter, and she's a World War II era. And just to throw this out there, that'll mean I didn't mention this, but the classes break down as this. They have aggressors whose focus is primarily dealing damage. They have defenders who do what it sounds like. They tend to have more ways of getting in the way, interrupting things, helping be damage sponges, and survive through hits and things. They have a little more crowd control generally. They're not going to usually be as good offensively at putting damage out. And then you have supporters, and what they do is vague. Support can mean a lot of different things, but they do what they suggest. They support the battle group. And they may still be okay at some of the other things. And then there's soul gazers, which are sort of unique to this game, because there's a mechanic where having souls helps you basically to further your ability to win the game, which is done if you've played a MOBA. You each have kind of they call it an effigy, or it's called the core in some games, and you need to destroy that. But by having souls, you reduce its HP. So for each soul you have, you reduce the HP by 4. And then it has either 16 or 20 hit points based on the size of the game you're playing. So soul gazers are the best at being able to manipulate those souls and pick them up. They usually have higher numbers at doing it, and they're able to do it from a little farther away. In addition, soul gazers usually also do other things. They have a little bit of a support role, or they may do damage a little bit, etc. They usually, again, are best at soul gazing, but they're decent at other stuff too. And then the pick and ban, sort of like, if you have a soul gazer and they don't, you could have a major advantage because you may not need to directly interact, and that'll change how the game's played. So those are the different classes. So and then race wise, there's elves, dwarves, minotaurs, humans, and elves, dwarves, minotaurs, humans, orcs. So as I go through it, I'm just gonna kind of list off what's here. Some of the sculpts are done, or the renders are done rather. So we have, I'm just, like I said, gonna go through the list here. They have Alandir, who's an elf ranger with a bit of a World War II base. He's kind of cool. I've never really thought to have a compound bow with exploding tip arrows on it, but it's pretty neat, and he's still pretty true to like the elf ranger archetype at the same time, so I really like that. There's an orc shaman named Haxa, who's a supporter. He does stuff with totems, as I recall, and his base is amazing. He's like standing on, if you're scrolling through this at all while I'm discussing, he's standing on this big there's a word for it, totem pole. He's got a little totem on the ground there, and he's like crouched on it. That sculpt is amazing. Styx, who ties into Zarin, who's one of the Wave 1 releases. He's actually one of their more sci-fi focused. So he's a cyborg, actually, but he's a supporter. He was actually they had a different name for him the first time. Anyway, he's a pretty cool supporter. He has some movement shenanigans where he can like swap places for certain people. He's a little more on the squishy side, but he has some very interesting play, I think, if you can master him. And again, this sculpt is amazing. He's got this sort of like chain scythe, or double chain scythe thing going on. He's got a mechanical top hat. Pretty fantastic. There's Zyvira, who's a Minotaur Necromancer. She's a soul gazer. She's sort of the like old crone take on a Minotaur. So sort of hunched over, but able to wield, strong powers. She does a lot of hit point manipulation as sort of the way she supports. There's it says Dwarf Hunter, Zaffin. He's actually like a dwarf pirate, basically, with a gigantic crossbow. They've quoted to say he's basically the closest they'll get to artillery probably in the game, because he has a really long range, and he's better off if he doesn't move. This model may have the best base they've done to date. One note, the bases in the models, every model comes with a scenic base. Bases in some of them are some are more detailed than others. This one might be one of the most fantastic that they've done, at least the render. He's basically got like a part of a boat that's up on shore that either crashed or whatever, and he's sitting there with, doing his best Captain Morgan pose with a giant, basically ballista that he's trying to shoot. The model is gonna be so good. Anyways, we continue. There's another sci-fi focused entry. Her name is Nephany. She's an elf warrior, another aggressor. She's sort of the Death of a Thousand Cuts type. She has two basically short laser swords. We will lightsabers for those of you who are Star Wars fans, but obviously they don't call them that since I think that's trademarked. She has a jetpack. Again, she's an elf. Very cool model. In her sculpt, she's like blasting off with a jetpack and wielding those two short swords, so it's very cool. They just posted the sculpt today for Kogan, the Minotaur warrior, another aggressor. He's World War II focused, and he's armed with a blunderbuss and a bandsaw. And frankly, I have a friend who, if I ever imagined him as a Minotaur warrior, like this guy looks exactly like what I would imagine. Like, he's just a ripped dude wearing a bloody tank top and a pair of jeans and is angry. It's great. So another aggressor. He's kind of cool too because so in the first series there's Thorgar, who's just a straight up melee aggressor, and he's got both the range and the melee, so he's not going to be amazing at either of them, but having both is going to provide some pretty unique approaches. And that's the end of where they have for sculpts for now, so I'm just going to go, but I'm still going to go through the art. They have Gendris, who's a Minotaur Druid. For those of you who are joining me from my Full Circle series, she is basically everything circle in one model. She does lightning that can turn into chain lightning later. She puts force in play. She has an ability that roots. That's not necessarily unique to like a circle from War Machine, but being able to hold something in place, it's very much like one of the popular supports actually in Heroes of the Storm. I don't know, that's the one I play. I don't know League and Dota very well. I'm very excited for this model. She looks very exciting, and I think that anytime you're able to put terrain down on the table, usually good, it's going to be very rewarding to high level players. There's Sky, who's an elf monk, looks a lot like Neo, is sort of the high agility type defender. Svetlana, who's a dwarf druid. Honestly, the most classic looking of druids, you know, cloak, leather armor, sickle. Victor, who's cool, he's a halfling warlock, so I'm told warlock in kind of the World of Warcraft sense, where he summons a demon actually named Algorath, and then he can just hurl lots of magic for damage, so a lot of fun there. Zonia, who is the archetype of orc berserker barbarian type female model. There's just the model's actually, the art for her is actually pretty simple in a lot of ways, but man, is this going to just be an amazing model for painters to get their hands on. And then I'm just going to breeze through them, but the three neutral monsters are Ashtooth, who's kind of a big werewolf monster type. Inferno, who's a fire elemental. That's going to look real cool. He's got a lot of lava stuff going on. We have Vujasha, who's this like sea hag, sort of like, it's hard to describe. It's kind of like octopus meets angry mermaid. And that model's going to be really cool, I think. There's a lot of like seaweed and there's fins. Pretty much all of the water things all in one model. And then Algorath, who's kind of a he's a human-sized demon that comes with the other guys. So, okay, I talked a lot faster through that than I was thinking I would need to, but the moral of the story is go check out this Kickstarter. It's amazing. I'm hoping to get more games in soon. If I do, I'm going to try to intersperse some videos with Judgement into my regularly scheduled program. I don't know right now if I'm going to how I'm going to handle all of the details for that, but that's kind of going to be the plan. So hopefully you get a chance to go take a look at this. If you have any questions for this, hit me up on any social media as well. Also feel free to hit up their there's a group on Facebook called Judgmental, I think, and they're on YouTube and they're on Twitter as well. They have a webpage, so definitely hit them up. The guys who work on the game are really happy to answer any questions and help you out. I actually got to meet Andrew, one of the game creators, at Adepticon. He was able to fly out and pair with Muse on Minis, and they They did very well. He was able to give a lot of demos out, and they were able to sell a decent amount of product as well. So that was great. And like I said, they're on day 4 or 5 now, and the Kickstarter is going pretty strong. So don't wait too long, of course, but I've pretty good confidence in this, and I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. So thanks as always for listening. If you have any questions for me as well, feel free to hit me up, and we'll hope to talk more about Judgment in the coming weeks.